About a year ago, I was introduced to True Niogen, a supplement specifically designed to boost a key cellular resource called NAD. That's short for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. And I was really impressed with the research that showed that increased NAD levels can promote cellular repair, maintain healthy mitochondria, and increase energy throughout the trillions of cells in our body. I've been taking True Niogen ever since, and I am truly persuaded, which is why I'm so excited to welcome them back to the program. Let's get into how True Niogen works. From age 40 to 60, humans can experience a 50% decline in NAD, leaving our cells with a shortage of that incredibly valuable energy resource. Additionally, things like immune stress, poor diet, even alcohol consumption can all deplete our cell NAD levels. Research suggests that increased NAD can support cellular defense against these physiological stressors. True Niogen is designed to boost NAD levels and is backed by clinical research and regulatory approvals. Now, while the research is still evolving, I am truly impressed by the possibilities surrounding NAD and the research behind True Niogen. And I suggest you check out their information for yourself. To learn more about the research, science, and to order your supply of True Niogen supplement, visit drdrew.com/TrueNiogen and use the code DREW at checkout for a special discount on orders of 3 bottles or more. So that's my website, drdrew.com/TRUNIAGEN, and use the code DREW today.
Hey everyone, it's a dose of Dr. Drew.
Hey everybody, I'm going to bring my guest right in here in just a second, but let me quickly go over some COVID stuff. You guys were asking on the restream already, what do I think about any spiking in cases? Look, when you look at the overall data, it may be going up in Florida. There is definitely a little uptick there. I'm expecting upticks like that in various regions throughout the country, New York, California. But it is not affecting hospitalization rate. It's not really affecting the death rate that we don't expect it to for another week or so. So I don't know if those are real trends or not. Oftentimes those spikes, like in Michigan yesterday, was just the result of tests coming in that have been backlogged. So until we see a real trend, like several data points, I'm not making too much of it. Generally, when you look at the United States overall, we're doing very, very, very well. It's generally continuing to trend down. It's been a little stubbornly flat here in California because we closed so early that we just are still having it kind of play out a little bit. No evidence that the current demonstrations are having a significant effect on the outbreaks. They certainly, as Dr. Fauci said, are a potential source, but to me it proves, if nothing else, that either the masks are working great and the distancing works great, even when you're not practicing it perfectly, or that the virus is dying out just naturally, which it can do, or the seasonal variation with summer is making it obviously kind of die out again for the season. Let me welcome my guest, the great Tyrus. Tyrus, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Doc.
I appreciate you being here and making sense of things for me. And as we were kind of chatting a little bit before the mics heated up, I was thinking about the fact that I retweeted your black box on, was that Tuesday? And and I got no pushback for it. So I thought, oh, this is a strategy for me. I really shouldn't. I don't feel, well, let me put it that way. I don't feel, Tyrus, that I should be talking. An old white man should just sit by and listen. And a lot of the rhetoric is, we just want you to listen. We just want you to listen, which I'm delighted to do. Where am I getting this wrong? Should I be saying something else? I don't know what to say.
I think just listening, we all need to listen. I need to listen. You know, you can't get, I talked to you today about one of the things I like coming on your show is a kind of a mentoring thing for me. If you want wisdom, you have to seek wisdom, and challenge yourself. But when they're like, you just need to listen. No, you have a lifetime of experience. You have situations that you have dealt with that no one else has dealt with. You have seen things. You see things from a different perspective. So for you not to give after you listen, to hear that and give information back to add to it is a horrible mistake.
Okay, all right. So you last time you were on, you helped me understand some of the stuff at issue with the 3 guys that were standing by that have now been arrested. Is there a reason? I thought that was a good thing. People didn't seem to celebrate that very much. Did I miss something there?
No, you know what? I think it was more of it. was more of a matter of fact situation. It should have happened a lot sooner. So I don't think you were going to see the celebration, because it's almost like that should have been happening, especially when you're looking at you're seeing the footage now. There could be the guy whose knee on his back could be just as culpable as the guy with the knee on his neck.
Oh, I think
the combination of the things.
I think I explained that to you last time. I think maybe
yes,
more
you
so.
Did.
Maybe more so.
Yeah.
And that when I really thought about that, I was like, oh my God, people, it's unfortunately the fact that the guy in the neck was hurt, making things worse for sure, but the guy in the chest may have actually been, that might have been the murder weapon.
Yeah, the combination of the two.
Yeah.
I just, anyone who, as far as getting an image or a vision of that, just think about when you were a kid and you played dogpile, or you'd be wrestling around and 2 or 3 people are on top of you. You'll yell, I can't breathe, because you can't expand your chest.
Exactly. And then if you add the fentanyl, which depresses the respiratory drive, that's it. Yeah. You don't fight it.
And that's why I feel like they're all should have pretty much the same charge.
And I guess the other reason people aren't too excited about it is that they want to see the system actually bring it to bear, right? They're fearful that nothing will happen.
But here's another thing that we always seem to forget. We are now, the world is watching, and more significantly, 12 jurors are watching. Somewhere in Minneapolis or St. Paul or Minnesota, wherever this trial is going to happen, 12 jurors are watching everything right now and being influenced, and you're just hoping that one of the jurors wasn't someone who experienced his business being burned down, or lost a loved one who was attacked during the protests, or was directly affected by it, or is outraged by it. So we have to think about the big picture. And I felt when the arrest came down, there was, I thought, a change in terms of, we didn't see as much as the anger. The protests seemed to kind of change to more of the sitting down, the laying down, the more demonstrations, more speaking. I think things got a little more level-headed.
Yeah.
Because, but also there was some other great things that come out. Now looks like Minnesota's going to outlaw chokeholds.
Yeah.
Police.
And maybe the whole, it's outlawed here in Southern California. Maybe the whole state is going to do that too here in California.
Yeah. And we're seeing police chiefs taking responsibility. You don't often see police leadership ever admit to any wrongdoing. There was in the NFL, Goodall came out and said that, we weren't listening to players about, there was some,
that was interesting. Didn't you think that? I thought that was very interesting. Didn't you? To see Roger Goodell going, we're racist. We hear you. we're all the things you've always said we are. Incredible.
And I think, but that the protest and the reaction of everyone, not just the Tyruses of the world, not just the Black community, but Dr. Drew, your community, people of all walks of life, colors of skin, sexual orientation, the mass agreement of outrage is what brought this change about. So when people say you have nothing to add, and if you do speak on it, you're out of line. No, it's exactly the fact that you are putting this on your show, that you are not just doing a one-off. You're not telling us what you think. You're listening and you're giving advice. You're giving off your life. You're contributing your life experience. And that is so important. When the unaffected are affected, that's when you get change. And that's what's happening. And that's 100% because of people like yourself who are willing to take the time, not just to listen, to talk and have dialogue.
Well, I actually got
essential.
Can't
do it without you.
I actually got deep into this during the origin, during the Ferguson situation. And I was doing a show on HLN back then, and we covered it every day, and I learned a ton, and I sort of expanded my sense of the problem. And one of the things, I don't know, there's a lot of good things that get lost in people's politicizing everything. Hey, I just want to push something out there. I'm going to push out a little bit later too. My daughter has she's an activist, and she has a website that you can support. # Bree Way, WAYY, Justice for Breonna Taylor. It's the official Justice for Breonna Taylor GoFundMe if you wanted help with that. That is just at gofundme.com, #BreeWay, WAYY. That whole story was crazy too. And there's lots of crazy stories coming up as a result of crazy is not the right word. Horrible stories coming up because
Horrific,
of because of the conversations we're having now. So let me bring. I want to go back to the Roger Goodell and the NFL. I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to predict that kneeling is going to be part of the way we show respect during the national anthem collectively from now on. That by the end of the football season, everybody will be the entire stadium will be taking a knee. What do you think of that prediction?
I think that's accurate. I think we need to separate the fact that it's not a side thing. You can kneel for those who seek justice and have not earned it, and at the same time love your military.
Well, it's going to signal a collective too. It's going to signal a collective understanding that before it was signaling resistance. Now I think it's going to signal collective. I really do think that's going to shift.
I think it's going to go into uniting.
You're
kneeling to unite, opposed to kneeling to oppose, because again, it goes back to my argument through all this. Yes, it's a racial problem, but it's going to take us all to solve it. It's a human being thing to solve it, and we cannot. And listen, we pointing fingers and we can this, that, and whatever, but the solutions are going to come from having dialogue like this and having different people step up and get involved, vote, take a job in politics that you normally wouldn't see. We need everyone to get involved, and that's where real change comes from.
Ozzy is saying, there are people in the restream saying, no, never happened. I'm not, it's just a prediction. Let's see how it goes. I understand it's going to meet some wins, some headwinds, but I just feel like that's probably where we're going to end up. I got a suspicion. Then the other thing in terms of me speaking up, there's a couple things that I would speak up about. One, I talked to one of the leaders of Black Lives Matters, and he was talking about essentially eliminating the police. And I just have studied my history enough to know when you eliminate existing institutions, into that vacuum does not go good things. It's one thing to reform existing institutions. It's another thing to eliminate them. And that I hope my experience and my own studies, I hope I can bring that to bear. But I think that's a major mistake. What do you think?
And it's an unrealistic goal, because literally we will go into the dark ages without law and order, without the men and women willing to jump in with the dregs of society and deal with the murderers and the rapists and the people breaking the law. Look at the reaction to the looting. Do you have any idea what that would be like if there was no law and order?
Right.
You think things are violent now. You think craziness with public lynchings. I mean, there would be across the board, that doesn't make sense. It's an unrealistic goal. It means that I don't really want to sit at the table with you, in my honest opinion. You need to come up with a different way of how police issues are looked at. Mm-hmm. You can talk about having a different committee and an entirely different law enforcement agency that directly deals with complaints with the police department.
Well, so
where it's not handled indoors anymore.
I agree with you, and that has happened now here in Los Angeles. That's one of the things that's come out of the demonstrations. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Every time I get in this room, I start sneezing after about 10 minutes or so.
Tomorrow the cleaning lady, me, comes. Don't worry.
but the fact of removing the DA, who might in some cities is a political appointee and might be in bed with the police unions, from the process of evaluating the police makes perfect sense to me. But that is the other. But that goes to the other issue that, again, if I'm speaking, I would speak to, and this is what I learned during the Ferguson thing. When people are asking for justice, they don't understand that the measure of justice is different for politicians and law enforcement than for the rest of us. They have something called qualified immunity. It's a defense against a lot of stuff. It's why when I wanted to go after Mayor Garcetti when the rat problem was so bad here and we were having disease outbreaks. I thought that was so irresponsible that I wanted to be able to put a case against him, because it was literally it was what's the word when you're so bad at your job that you oh crap,
Incompetent.
beyond incompetency. But in any event,
horrific.
But they went no.
He
He's
has
got
a bigger
qualified
word.
immunity. You can't go after him. Qualified immunity, and this is the piece I don't think people understand, and so they feel like they're not getting justice because some people aren't delivering the justice, when in fact there's this thing between what they think they're going to get and what they get called qualified immunity. And I wonder, I just think that needs to be discussed and moved a bit. We need legislation to move that, so the idea of what people think they're going to get in terms of justice is closer to reality.
And that's a great point, because one of the things that often disturbs me is when you see prosecutors and district attorneys, they're always judged by their conviction rate.
Mm-hmm.
And not judged by how they follow the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And they can actually lose a job for finding a guy innocent. And we see the results of that all the time when DNA comes back and a man who sat in prison for 15 years was completely innocent. And then you look at the case where the prosecution will ignore certain things that would change things because they got to get the conviction.
Yes.
Like, we need to look at criminal justice across the board.
And that's why there's been concern about the what is it, second-degree murder charges against the guy that killed George Floyd.
I'm concerned about it.
Yeah, for the same reasons you're talking about, right?
It's very hard to prove intent.
Right. Oof.
The first charge, you didn't have to prove intent.
They would have gotten
you have
that.
Different theories of the way he died. The bottom line, he was murdered.
Yeah.
But again, there's 12 jurors sitting out there, and if there's one of them that is, well, I'm not sure, maybe it was a heart attack, then you have it was this, or well, it was the other, well, if it was the other cop, it couldn't be him. Like, there's so many different, unfortunately, things that make me nervous.
Confusing.
in terms of getting intent. In terms of, if you don't have intent, I think it's a lot easier to prove, and it's a lot easier to get a conviction opposed to try to show that he intended, that he was intending on what he was doing was premeditated, or he decided at one point in the struggle to go, I'm going to end this man's life. That's going to be difficult.
There's another thing that, again, through digging into this, the nuances of the problem that I have learned is that you have to remember the idea of the police is a faulty notion. Every little, tiny, large, small, medium-sized town in this whole goddamn country, every town has to field and fund its own police force. That's it. And they each have different policies and procedures. They have different resources in terms of being able to acquire instruments of non-lethal force. They attract different kinds of people. And that I've always found to be a mystifying problem that no one ever talks about.
Yeah, you don't. There's different. When you think about it, and I think about a long time. Like, it's very difficult. One guy was like, who I recently was on a panel. He said you could have bad credit and not be allowed to be a police officer. But then someone will go, but we need bodies. And there's a guy who's a little trigger happy, but man, we need bodies
in some town, right? It may not be LAPD, it may not be NYPD,
yes.
But it may be in Shreveport. Who knows, or what? Not to speak anything of Shreveport, but who knows where, right? And if somebody really wants to do this
where
job,
decisions are made, or nepotism. Well, his father was a sergeant, his grandfather was a police chief, so we kind of got to push him along, and he'll figure it out as he goes. And then, there's a lot of things that happen in the one profession that you wouldn't, somebody saying, well, he's not a very good pilot, but his father was a really good jet pilot.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
It's like, we come from a family of doctors. So, it's like, no, son, it's not passed down. You have to go to college,
That's right.
So there's a lot of things that we need to look at in terms of how someone becomes a police officer, and more importantly, what's it going to take for them to maintain, because burnout, PTSD.
Yeah, it's huge.
You know, there's a lot of things that these police officers are dealing with, and do we have the things in place to help them?
I can tell you it's better. I worked in the field for a while of getting referrals from employee assistants. And 20 years ago, it was bad because they were really resistant. There was a culture against it, and that has lightened up quite a bit. Hey, by the way, we want to take calls. The number is 9842 Dr. Drew, 984-237-3739, 984-2-DRDREW. We're happy to take some calls with you guys. I'm looking at the restream. Tyrus, how are you as you watch things unfold in the country? How are you feeling? How do you feel about it? I mean, I know you're going to be on Gutfeld tonight, so I'm sure you'll be asked by Greg similar kinds of questions. Tell me.
It depends what I was looking at. There was some moments that I was extremely upset and angry, seeing the death of the police chief who was shot outside of trying to protect the storefront and bleeding out in the street. And I was screaming at the young guy who was trying to talk to him, put your damn phone down and give him CPR. And I didn't know where he was shot. I just knew he was shot. Right. And he was bleeding, but do something, hold his hand, do something. You know, if he's dying on the street, be the human being. Don't, filming him and yelling, I don't think was enough, Yeah. That will be with me for a long time. And making sure that justice for the victims of the looting and the victims as a result of the protesting, which it was a result of police officers being unlawful and lawless. And when you have lawlessness from the top, from the place where you're not supposed to get it, you're going to get lawlessness everywhere. It's directly responsible. The four individuals who chose to be lawless and murder someone are just as responsible for the protesting, for the rioting and looting. It's all connecting, and they're all connected. If you are protesting next to a burning building and you don't put your sign down to grab a bucket of water or something, you know what I'm saying? You're
well,
there,
it's called
you're not doing anything.
It's been people don't think about that. Omission, meaning omitting to do something, in some situations is as bad as committing, meaning participating in. And that's something that's a moral law we should have in our head, and I don't think we teach that. I really don't. We teach a lot of mind your own business.
And that's something that I looked at, and I hated the divisiveness. I hated that you couldn't support your police department and be pissed and outraged and disgusted at the murderers, those murderous cops. There's no side, that we get into that where they want to pick a side. And then of course, the politicalization, the news networks telling what story they wanted to tell, going after the president or going after the protesters, whatever got the most readings. And then you had people who are coming out trying to have the shock word and to drop all kinds of preconceived knowledge. And, you get frustrated as it goes on. That's when the geniuses come out and start telling you how it is. And they use things like generalizations, the black community, the white community, the police nation, they have all the answers, because one thing I've learned through this and life, you cannot argue with an ignorant person because they can connect anything. They have no rules. When you're dealing with facts and truth and intelligence, ignorance has way more guns because everything's connected.
It's called cognitive distortion.
There's nowhere they can't go. They can bring it all together,
Hey, Susan, would you put the Justice for Breonna Taylor official site up again so people can see that on the stream if they want to donate? Again, it's a Justice for Breonna Taylor official site. We have a couple of links to that. So I want to talk about another argument that I'm hearing. See, I am in favor of civil disobedience, and by civil disobedience I mean standing up to a government who is doing something unjust with a specific act of disobedience. Like, I feel that people getting arrested demonstrating, I think they've made their point. They've done something where they got arrested, but they've not created anarchy and chaos. That's something I don't understand. But people are defending the anarchy and chaos by equating the Boston Tea Party with anarchic looting. And let me just set it up. Obviously, my point of view is a little skewed because the Boston Tea Party was an act of specific political disobedience against the government, who held the what's it called, the contract or the charter for the East India Company, which was the company who was shipping the tea. So it was the government's company that they were trying to inflict a specific message on because of some specific taxes they got that they didn't feel happy about. They didn't run through Boston and destroy it. They targeted a government institution to make a point about the taxes they were paying for this material. Do you feel any connection between looting and Boston Tea Party?
Okay, well, let's give them that. Okay, let's say, okay, the looters were seeking a revolution against the government. And if that's the looters' deal, right? What was England's response to the Boston Tea Party?
I think they sent a ship into Boston and started firing. I'm not sure if it happened that quickly.
Yes, and what eventually led shortly after that?
Not good things in Boston.
Just stick with me here. Just stick with me here.
I think the Boston massacre.
Right with this me.
I think the Boston massacre occurred right around that time. I'm not exactly clear on all my history, but yes, it unraveled very quickly.
Yes, and eventually a war broke out.
Yeah.
Do you think the looters would like the same response as because the guys who went into the Boston Tea Party kind of had a plan.
Yeah.
And they ended up where there was a vote and they decided that we were going to be our own country and we were done with England. I don't think the looters have those kind of numbers
or plans.
And I don't think they want to go to deal with a response from the United States military. So it's always, like I said, we're dealing with, you can connect anything other than just saying that during the protest, some bad apples, since that seems to be a phrase, some bad apples try to take advantage of the law, of the police backing off to allowing the protest, and they took advantage and committed crimes and robbed and loot. I don't think anybody who was backing up shoes at Foot Locker was thinking of Mr. George Floyd when it was happening.
Right.
I think they saw an opportunity, and most of them, they were young and dumb, and they were all walks. Everyone was guilty. Every race seemed to be involved in the looting and stuff like that. But it's a specific individual that should be treated with the same disdain, especially the ones that committed major horrific crimes, as those 4 police officers. There should be the same outrage that we will not tolerate this. When our country was founded on peaceful protest, and some things got ugly and some things got dark, but the rioters and the looters need to be treated with the same disdain, because we will not tolerate that in our society. And it is outrageous because that's not the norm. And when we have law and order, those things don't happen.
And I heard somebody talking about the nature of revolutions, and they were talking about the American Revolutionary War, saying, that really wasn't even a revolution. That was a civil war amongst British citizens, where a colony of Britain, rose up against its people and split the country. Believe me, there was a lot of royalists here when the whole thing happened.
Yep.
What's that?
No, I was saying, they say that, but there was a lot of other individuals involved in winning that war.
Yeah.
It wasn't just Brits.
France.
So,
yeah.
France. There was some slaves who fought for freedom.
Yep.
There was Native Americans that got involved and helped out.
It's true.
So
it's true.
So it was a group. It was a huge effort for the freedom of this country, just like the Civil War. Wasn't just the North and South. When slaves got involved for freedom, changed the course of the war. and then we have the America we have today. So it was, once again, what I talked to you about in the beginning of the show. It takes a group with a lot of different hands and a lot of different skin tones to get things done.
People are schooling me on the dates of the Boston Massacre versus the Tea Party. It was actually 3 years between the massacre, which was earlier, and the Tea Party.
Touche.
But that's interesting that things were escalating in that. Man, I have to look at the timeline again and remind myself.
Well, you have to understand, 3 years back then is like 3 weeks now, because you had to send somebody with an insult to Britain, so then that sea trip, and then that guy might not make it because of the seas and and scurvy. So you got to send somebody behind that, and then that guy's got to send a carrier pigeon. Hopefully they're catch it in time. Then they got to read the message. Then they got to first then go to the king and explain it to him. Then there was a lot of inbreeding back then in the royal bloodline, so explaining to him might have took a fortnight.
That's true.
Then you gotta
and
then you gotta respond. Then they got to sail back. Hopefully they don't run into any problems in the waters, pirates, etc., storms, scurvy. Then they send that, and then we got to read it. And then, you know what I'm saying? That argument could take 3 years.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, 6 months ago, and then they still have to be, how dare they? Tell them this. Yes, sir. I'm on my way. How long did you get there? 4 months, sir. All right. I'll wait. Like, so 3 years was a lot faster than, now, where you could just send a tweet. We had to send actual birds with notes back then.
Somebody said, and then have some mead. Settle down and have some mead.
Yes. Yes.
That's good.
What's mead?
It's kind of a beer, a honey beer.
Yes.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Again, we're willing to take calls, 984-237-3739, 984-2-DR-DREW if you guys want to chat. We are looking at your threads here, so if you have any questions on the restream, we will pick them up there too. Your mom's still around, isn't she?
Who?
Your mom.
My mother?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, she is. She's not a fan. Let's just put it nicely. Yeah.
Of everything that's going down.
Of me. So I'm sure she's. Yeah,
What?
I haven't talked to my family, my immediate family. I think once in the last 5 years, and before that it was like 7 years. Like, yeah, I don't have much. I am assuming. I did. At one point, it was brought to my attention by someone that had looked at my mother's Facebook page, and it was full of Fox News sucks. So, not a fan apparently.
Well, so what do you do with that? I mean, you don't exactly toe some party line when you were asked for comment on Fox News. In fact, you're somewhat unpredictable in terms of what your opinion is going to be. I think that's what Greg likes. But then you get painted with the brush of being, say, no different than Laura Ingraham or Tucker Carlson, who also are very, very different than each other. How do you handle that?
I always say, watch me. If you don't know, I'll never be boxed into anything, because I'm just too big to be in a box, and I refuse to do that. And I just can't go along with anything. Probably would serve me well to find a group and jump in, and I would probably rise to great things, probably have my own primetime show, but everything will be going along, and then something will happen, and I'll go, can't let it go, man. I just, as one of my best lifelong friends, Rico, used to say, you love going out in a blaze of glory. And sometimes I wish you would just fall behind the fog.
But I do feel like this is the time when clarity and diverse thoughts are really important. I mean, you just gave me that lecture, and I think that's true.
I've always been that way, but I've have my life experience. I've been homeless. I've had some money in the bank. I've been fired. I've been, the one good thing is I have more hires than fires, which is always the goal, because that means you're still working. But I have been wretched. I have been, on the wrong side of things. I've been the bad guy, and I acknowledge. So whenever I think of I always try to think about how I really feel about something before I speak on it. And you cannot be political. I'm very unpolitical in my political, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I like some of the things the president does, and if I don't like something, I'll be like, yo, that was dumb. Why would he do that?
Yeah.
And I think if there's anything, if we're being real with ourselves, we don't 100% agree with anything anyone's doing. We're all human beings, and and when you try to act like that, I think you're selling yourself short, you know?
How do you feel about what he's doing these days in the face of all this?
I think him trying to I think the president shows his age a lot. He shows that mindset.
That's
from
really
his
interesting.
generation.
I saw a commentary on that too. I thought that was really an interesting insight. Yeah. Yeah, that he's not here, not in the here and now. He's thinking like 1972 or something.
Yeah, well, that's the way. And I think he thinks when he says law and order, he's going to attack what he feels is the biggest problem first. He sees the loot and riot, and he's going to stop that at all means. And then he's going to worry about the conversation afterwards. And his generation, that's how they did it. You put the fire out first, then you sit around and you talk about the smoke.
Hey, man, I get that. I understand. When I read that, I thought, oh yeah, I could be guilty of that too. I got to be careful, because you just want it all to stop before you can sort of have conversation. Right. But that's.
But we also live in a time, no matter what he says, there's a certain part of this population that whatever he says is going to be wrong. Doesn't matter. You know, and I always talk about this. We can thank Mitch McConnell for all this division. He started this party when he had his little meeting at the cafe about Barack Obama. He's going to be a one-term president, and I'm going to do everything I can to get him out of there. And you know, you have to ask him, was the Supreme Court pick worth it? Because that led to just disruption. Party before anything. President Trump, didn't matter what he was going to do. The Democrats were you took our Supreme Court pick, no problem. We're going to take your president. Like literally, they just doesn't matter. They're going to have an issue with anything he does because you had an issue with anything Barack Obama did. You know, and as long as that division and disrupt and just we refuse to find compromise. The only time we saw some little bit of change was COVID, but how long did that last?
Right.
You know,
which is a whole other topic we can get into about the lack of transmission and still we're locked down, and yet people are just completely disregarding it and nothing's being transmitted that we can at least tell. It's been to a point now. I mean, it takes 3 to 7 days for 80% of people to get sick. So, and the demonstrations have been going on for 10 days now? And so, we should have already seen the uptick for sure. Though I do think that anybody who is out demonstrating should, about 48 hours later, get a COVID test if you can, a coronavirus test. I think it'd be a very smart thing to do. How long have you been on Fox now?
It was brought to my attention. I'm rolling up on 5 years, if you can believe that.
So you were on during President Obama's administration?
I was on the end of it, yes. On the tail end of it, yes.
Were things different there then?
In terms of
I don't know, just curious.
House and paying bills?
No,
really.
No. I mean, in terms of the rhetoric or what was being, I guess.
No, it was just different. It was different because the Democrats had the presidency, so everyone was mad at Barack Obama, and they were trying to find a million things wrong with him. The Republicans were angry about everything he did. It wasn't much difference. Right. And then the only difference was that there was certain lines that they wouldn't cross in terms of, I'm sure they could have all got together and tried to impeach him in the House when they had it. I'm sure they could have found something to do that, but I think they kind of stuck with just kind of complaining about everything and demanding investigations and things like that. They didn't go to the scope to which the Democrat did. And when they got control of the House, they went for completely one-sided impeachment, which just, you knew you didn't have it, you know, and it was just one of those things where all it really did was distract us, and it ended up really hurting us because there was so much attention on impeachment that we weren't paying attention to what was going on in China. And I know they want to blame that all on the president, but you were sleeping at the wheel too.
Totally agree. I said that.
You were sleeping at the wheel too. You know,
let me respond to some stuff on the restream. The Ozark pool party resulted in no transmission. There was one case of somebody did have, one person had coronavirus who was at that pool party but does not appear to have contracted it at that pool party. So there was zero transmission at that pool party.
What does that tell you?
Well, and I would argue that we now have millions of people in the streets, also very limited or no transmission. So it just tells me that it doesn't transmit out of doors, which is something we really knew. It also may mean that it's either run its course or it's dying off in the season of summer. We'll see. Also, Jeremy says, didn't you say the 70s sucked? Oh, my God, they sucked like you can't believe. Just look at the vehicles and the architecture. That's all I need you to do, and you'll know exactly what that was like.
A lot of ugly cars.
It was a depressing.
A lot of
oh my
ugly
God,
cars.
it was the most awful, awful decade in the history of
ugly
America,
cars.
in my humble opinion. But what we were just talking about with the president and myself is this idea of establishing order. I think is sort of a 70s idea. I think Tyrus is right about that. Let's see.
There's a caller. I think something's up with our call-in studio program because it was acting weird, and they come on for a few minutes and then they kind of cut off.
All right,
It's weird.
Who is this?
Hi, can you hear me?
I hear you. What's going on?
Hi. Well, my name is Brooks, and I guess my question for you is, I am about to turn 19, and I just got diagnosed with my third concussion.
Uh-oh.
And in a span of about almost 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm getting ready to go back to school in August, and I'm starting mortuary school. And I guess I just have a really big fear that I'm going to fail out because my concentration is just not how it used to be. And
All right.
so I was wondering if you had kind of any words of, just like tips, maybe. I don't really know.
So hold on. When was your last concussion?
My last concussion was in January of 2018. I got my first concussion in November of 2017 from a car accident. I reconcussed myself in January.
Were you unconscious during any of these?
Just for the car wreck.
Okay. I think the car wreck may be more the issue than any of these other reconcussive episodes, though certainly they, of course, compound the situation. I'm going to bet, you're going to be fine, number one. And number two, if you have measurable deficits, in other words, changes in your ability to concentrate and remember, there are remedies for that. You can go to the student, what's the organization called, Susan? Where you go to get the disability checkups for students that need help, more time, and that kind of stuff.
At the school.
Yeah.
I think it's like the handicap.
It's a disability. It's
disability.
There's like a disability office usually.
Right. You can get more time on tests.
They will give you more time. Will help you with. I'll give you. There's lots of things available to you to help you if indeed that's our.
Well, you have to get your
the
test
testing
first.
done. I know, but they'll help you with that. But be that as it may, in my humble experience, working hard and staying at it, people do these milder symptoms. People get better, and working at it makes it better. Much like they tell you to do crossword puzzles if you're worried about keeping off dementia. Same thing is true if you want to recover from things like this. So I think you're going to be fine.
Use the medical system in the college because it's all free.
People are commenting. What's that?
I have a question. Also, would it be because he's going into working in a mortuary, it'll be quiet, and the people that he's working with probably won't put up much of a fight, so he won't have to worry about
be any
not much danger in terms of, he's not going to move.
But I'll tell you what, if there is any movement, it will get his attention. So he won't have trouble concentrating then. A lot of comment in the restream about the music of the 70s. Yes, there was some iconic music, but I urge you to look at the lyrics of 80% of the songs in the 70s, which were about some scumbag rolling in his van into a town, picking up a 14-year-old and then dropping her off the next morning to go about her business. I'm a rambling man. I got to go about what I'm doing. I mean, when you really listen to the lyrics of what they were singing about in the 70s, it is reprehensible. You'll be shocked. So
I recently that song Pina Colada, was that an 80s song or is that a 70s song?
I think that was more 80s-ish, but there's a lot of 70s stuff hanging over into the
the reason why I bring it up is recently or Ingrid, my wife, she had one of those readings, those and where they check out the negative energies and stuff. She's in the energy, and well, one of the songs that they said that she should play at work was Pina Colada because it's very nice and rhythmic. Right. And I was like, no, it's one of the worst songs ever. All it is about is cheating and lying. And
right.
The only saving grace was that his wife was a cheater too. So when they met at the restaurant to have fool around in midnight, with a stranger, it was each other, and they had a laugh. And when I broke it down to her, I said, yeah, what happened if that was us? She said, I would have stabbed you in the face. And I was like, but you were doing it too. She was like, no, I would have stabbed you in the face. So yeah, you're right. Lyrics, it sounds nice. Pina Colada, listen to the lyrics. Horrible human being. Horrible.
Yes, I've been listening to or particularly early 70s is, I was born a rambling man. Just stuff where they're just, and the way women are just absolutely demeaned and exploited. It's just, I can't understand why people don't listen to these lyrics or think about them at least. But anyway, go ahead, everybody. Enjoy your stuff. I want to comment on some of the restream here. You guys are moving so fast here. I can't. How's your wife's business doing?
Oh, phenomenal. I mean, she's hold it together, and then she started the packaging company for restaurants to help them during this time be able to send their meals across the country. So that has taken on a whole other life of its own, where I want to say now she's got anywhere from 26 to 30 different companies that are relying on her to get so they don't have to just deal with their local residents. They can now ship across the country. So they're able to make up some of the losses they've been going through during the COVID thing. So
great.
It's really, it's busy. I literally work during the day in the machines. I clock in like everybody else, and I'm working with my hands all day.
What is the website if people want to sign up and get some of the food?
Oh, at Sensible Meals, and then you can follow and you can check her out on Instagram at Ingrid Rink and get all the information you need, whether it's for diet stuff, and she does workout videos, and the food is great. I've been on it for a long time. I lost a ton of weight on it, and all kinds of fun stuff. Just check her out.
Again, our number here, if you want to call in, it's 9842-DRDREW, 9842-373-3739.
People are chilling today. I think we took a lot of calls yesterday, and they're just listening.
Well, I'm noticing the restream is pretty, it's different. I think
it's a weird
different
day.
Today. Yeah, it's a weird day. I'm not seeing a lot of questions about the usual things.
I think you guys were having some heavy conversations too. No, it wasn't like, oh, I want to get in the middle of that.
I don't think so. I think we've been having rather interesting conversation, but I think people are it feels like people are taking a deep breath, and they're sort of wanting to talk about 70s music and things like that.
Anything else?
Yeah,
yes,
right.
I think that's
right.
And I agree. I think you can take, but that's good also that there's not the angriness, and the people who are looking for a fight have seemed to got tired. Are the attackers have seemed to chill out a little bit, and that's a good thing. And it's it's Saturday, and we've been through a lot as a nation the last few days, and hopefully people are kind of zoning out and focusing on home and friends and getting their making sure their life is okay and their bills are paid and their health is
getting
good.
Back to business, getting back to the business of living and
at the same time looking at, we've had some real positive things happening, as a result of this horrific tragedy.
Yeah. When I started thinking about an entire stadium kneeling and everybody looking at the what has been perceived as resistance more as a signal of togetherness and unity, I started feeling kind of like, remember how people resisted gay marriage? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, who doesn't resist? What's wrong with that? People right now would be bewildered. 10 years from now, people would be bewildered that there would have been a resistance to gay marriage. And I feel like this is going to be a similar kind of a shift, I hope, that moves us all to unifies us. I hope. I mean, I don't know, of course.
Yeah. But typically that statement would have sparked the trolls in droves to come after you.
Yeah,
how un-American is Dr. Drew?
Yeah, that's not.
I always knew you were. And it's not, because I think people are starting to look at things differently, or
shift.
Just having like, not necessarily differently, but just going, you know what, I didn't think of it that way.
Exactly. Because
I don't think it's like, you're not wrong for defending the military at all.
No,
you just looking at it from a different perspective.
Yep. Yeah.
Because if you told me kneeling in front of the flag in any way disrespected the men and women who've given their life for this country, I wouldn't do it.
I mean, you could think of that as a signal of respect too. I mean, if you shift your thinking a little bit. Let's get to another call here. This is actually an interesting question from Katie. Hey, Katie.
Hi, Drew. I'm calling. My question was, so I know you talked a little bit about being around at the start of the AIDS epidemic.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just curious, like, if you notice any similarities as far as like patient care between then and now. So my mom was part of starting up the first HIV unit at Cedars.
Yeah.
And so she's talked a lot about like how she's seeing in nursing, like a lot of the similarities and just not knowing how to sort of protect ourselves and having the right equipment and knowing transmission. And obviously this is different. But
well, let me just tell you, the sadness of it and the ferocity, again, this is the thing about the COVID. It's ferocious for people that have the complications, and AIDS was just, I mean, I saw B-cell lymphomas like cut people in half. I mean, think crazy stuff we used to see, just horrible stuff. And there was nothing we could do. I mean, I was telling people every day they had 6 months to live, and I was never wrong. And that it was just a dark, awful period. It was so much sadder. This one was scarier. That one was sadder. And the scary part was, it was obviously transmitted through intimate contact, and we weren't sure people were going to adjust their behavior. And so there was a lot of talk about how bad is it going to get? How bad is it going to get? I mean, Dr. Fauci was saying 10 million are going to get sick. We got to do something. And that's what caused me to go on the radio. That's why I went on the radio, because I thought it was the right thing to do. No one was talking to young people at the time, and I thought, my God, we have to do this. But on the wards themselves, there was something even a little different that happened there. Because we were representing to the world that HIV was not transmitted through casual contact, we were being for a few years early in the epidemic, we're being very cavalier around AIDS patients. We were being like, we weren't wearing any protective gear whatsoever, and we're being like, hey, as long as we don't get a needle stick, and even if we get a needle stick, we kind of have to have a bunch of blood exposed to us. We didn't know about viral loads and stuff like that yet, which that would dumb us. But isn't that interesting? Rather than protecting ourselves, we were actually being kind of cavalier. Katie, you still there? Did I lose Katie?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to mute you because my children started screaming. But yeah, no, that's really interesting. And thank you for giving that background. I think it's amazing what you're doing. You've been, huge, like impactful person, I guess, in my life. And knowing you've been around through all of these things, like, definitely gives me some confidence that we'll get through this like we got through
well
that.
I must tell you, it's trying, man. This one has really upset me, this whole period, and lots as we look. I'm not ready to fully talk on it yet till we're really looking back and sort of gotten ourselves through this, because I don't want to be part of the problem.
It's interesting.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my mom, who she had started the HIV unit at Cedars, then it transitioned completely over to oncology only, because obviously AIDS patients were doing a lot better. So she's actually retired now, but by the end of her, working, was no longer treating AIDS patients.
Yeah,
that's all she did right out of nursing school.
Right. So I was there when AZT hit the ground. I was at the county hospital where it was being distributed. Dr. Leadham was the lead researcher distributing it at the time, and I was working with him on a daily basis. And they would set up a little differently at the hospitals I was working at. The AIDS patients were either going to oncology or to infectious disease or the ICU. They weren't. There was not an AIDS unit per se. It was just, if you went to oncology, you were treating AIDS patients. If you went to ID, you're treating AIDS patients. And that's just because everything was filled up with that at the time. But
Hey,
Katie,
Drew?
yeah.
Tyrus has to go soon, but
Okay.
there is one question here that I'm not
Thanks,
sure.
Katie. I'm going to put you on hold here. Thanks, Katie.
Yeah,
go
but
ahead.
I don't know if he has a minute to take that question from Deanna.
Yeah, I'll take it. Why not? I'll do
All right,
one.
Here we go. Last
Then
one.
I get back. My break's over. I get back to work.
All right, buddy. Back to the grind. This is Deanna. Go ahead, Deanna.
Hi. I'm pretty active on Periscope, and I notice like it crosses a lot of socio-demographic spectrums, and I've noticed like there's conversations being opened up because there's like a core group of people that have known each other since the app started, and they're all pretty much white. And then there's like what they call the soul side that has their own group that does the same thing, but it's just how do we open up communication between the two so that we like don't seem like white privilege and insult anyone's intelligence. I don't know. Like I am completely, I have been in a situation where I've been abused by police too. But I hate what's going on right now and what happened to George Floyd. But on the other hand, like you were saying, it's opened up an opportunity to make things better now. And
so is the question, how do we initiate conversation, or how do we take these siloed worlds on social media and put them together?
Yeah, and how do we I don't know. I'm not in their shoes, and I will never be. But I try to understand as much as I can.
So I'm gonna interrupt you because I know Tyrus has to go. I'm gonna get his intake on this because he's coaching me up on exactly the same thing. So go ahead, Tyrus.
Well, the first thing I would say, the easiest thing to do is throw them an invite. Throw them a friend. I'm not sure how those groups work because I'm not much on the internet guy. I'm like Fred Flintstone. I'm holding on to the old school ways. But throw them an invite. Reach out. You're never wrong. You have an experience, and the fact that you're white doesn't make it any less traumatic. And I've always said that you go to any poor neighborhood in the South or any poor white neighborhood across this country and ask them how their interactions with the police, you're going to get some damn rough stories. That because it's not going to stir the emotion of when a bad cop puts hands on a brother, that would, when it happens to a white guy, you just don't get the reaction. And so that's why a lot of times we don't hear about what happens to them, but it's happening, and it's happened to you. And while you cannot identify what it's like to deal with being treated different all the time, or maybe you have, everyone's experience is different. You could be getting treated like shit from your own people. From your own neighborhood. You get bullied by someone who has the same you've gone through trauma. You know what it's like to be separated, isolated, treated less than. We've all experienced that. We cannot let people tell us to be silent because the color of our skin is not the same. You might, by speaking up, have somebody from a different walk of life go, damn, girl, I went through the same thing. Like, I know what you're talking about. I know when it sucks when you're sitting on the curb with a zip tie on, wondering how long I'm going to sit here and how long is this guy going to dig through my purse? You know what I'm saying? Oh, I didn't have a purse. But I'm just saying, like, we don't know unless we share. And if someone doesn't like what you have to say, or it challenges what they're used to because, quote, white people don't know what they're talking about, you need to talk more. Because forget that individual. There's somebody out there just like you right now who's hearing you talk and be like, I had the same experience as her. I need to say something too. I'm supposed to be mad. Yeah. And you've gone through an experience, and you need to share that because you might help somebody else.
And I feel like now that we're sort of through the outburst, the spasms we were having, I feel like there is opportunity to talk again. And I will try to put myself out there, Tyrus, at your recommendation, my friend.
Me too.
Listen, just real quick, she's, as a woman.
Yeah.
And there's something we don't talk about. There is a lot of women who have horrific stories of what have at the hands of bad police officers.
Yep.
It has nothing, and they're not just going to beat on them because of the color of their skin. They might ask them to do depraved things to their body to avoid a ticket, or asking for sex instead of going to jail, or demanding, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
There are stories out there that police brutality is brutality. Now, we witnessed murder. Police brutality, there's enough of it to go around for everyone to talk about. And so we need to address that. And because if it's not just an isolated incident, and if everyone gets in the room and starts going, you know what, this is a problem, let's all work together to change it, we'll get change. But as long as one group's silent, we can't fix it. I really believe that.
All right, man. You and I will keep talking, and we'll look for you on Greg Gutfeld tonight. Yes?
Uh-oh.
Did you lose?
Did you just hang up?
Did we hang up on him?
I don't know.
Yes,
He's
sir.
still there.
Appreciate you.
All right,
He's
man.
moving
Appreciate you too.
Godzilla.
No, I'm still here.
And we'll see you tonight on Gutfeld, and hopefully talk to you later in the week.
Don't
right?
forget to watch Greg Gutfeld tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern.
All right, man.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, buddy.
And thank you for being you, Doc.
Thanks, man. Take care of yourself.
God bless.
I'm going to go back to the restream here. I know I've got some calls too to get into, but somebody by the name of Fartist123 is chronicling a lot of HIV symptoms, and let me just comment on that. He has the most common initial conditions to alert the presence of AIDS are pneumocystis pneumonia. Yes, pneumocystis carinii pneumonia. Back in the day when people would come in with their first episode of what's called PCP pneumonia, we would tell them they had 6 months to live because that's how it worked. That's just what was happening at that time. And you also mentioned Fartis, the primary HIV infection. Yes, it can look a lot like COVID, in fact. It can be high fevers and flu and a big miserable mess. And then the later stages is when you get the breakdown of the neurological and immunological systems and all the things like CMV retinitis and coccidiomycosis and all just terrible, terrible things happen. The Kaposi sarcoma, toxoplasmosis, all these things, horrible B-cell lymphomas we used to see, and that's how it worked out back in the day. But now we prevent all of that because we keep the immune system reconstituted by suppressing the virus, which is hopefully what we'll learn how to do with the COVID one day soon.
Can we take some calls since we finally got some?
I'm doing right now.
There's only a couple.
Sean, go ahead. Sean.
Hey, Dr. Drew.
Hey,
Good
man.
afternoon.
What?
Thank you for taking my call. I got a statement and 2 questions. First of all, as a retired policeman, I was disabled due to an accident. I was off duty. I've never been more ashamed of my chosen profession. I never thought I would see a uniformed officer slowly executing a handcuffed human being on the pavement.
Yeah.
I just never thought I would see that.
Oof.
My first question is, how can the higher-ups, mucky mucks, or CDC have been so wrong about the coronavirus outbreak? And why weren't we have a shorter lockdown?
So let me tell you, the CDC never recommended lockdown. Throughout the entire course, they never recommended lockdown. I checked the website on a regular basis. They never recommended it. They recommended masks and social distancing. The governors panicked and asked for lockdown. Now, to their defense, it was a confusing time, and I think they had to prepare for the worst case scenario. They needed time to figure things out, so I don't blame them for doing that. But to your point, why so many months doing it when the whole notion of lockdown was built on a high school science project in 2006? I don't know if you're aware of this, but a young lady in Albuquerque put together a project where she suggested that closing schools could prevent flu transmission. Children are the major transmitter of flu, not COVID, but it was a model that her father adopted, put into a paper that was a computer model, had her be the second author on this medical paper. The Bush administration adopted this model as their policy, and it was used for the first time in medical history in this outbreak. But the CDC never recommended it. I kept saying from the beginning, follow Fauci. He's very conservative. He'll figure this out. He'll get us through this. And the one he kept saying, the virus is in control. We don't really know where we are. Keep your distancing. Stay home if you can. Quarantine if you're a risk population. They would say that. But they didn't suggest shutting everything down. That was a governor thing. And I think that was all because people looked at Italy and went, oh my God, that's going to be us, which was never true. That was never true. We were never going to be Italy. And then they looked at New York and went, here it comes. Every city in the country is going to be like New York. Also never was going to happen. And we had this Imperial College of London model out there that was saying 60 million people were going to die. And it was the most erroneous, shitty bit of math I've ever seen. Non-clinicians, people who don't understand how to make medical judgments and how we improvise and how we fight things when there are infectious disease outbreaks and how we adjust so the worst case scenarios that are purely of a mathematical modeling, of course, don't happen. Of course they don't happen. There was no chance of that. So there we were. So that's about the best I can do with it, Sean.
Want to mention Alex Berenson's book?
Yeah.
Yes, I got that book 2 days ago.
Yeah, he chronicles very in very simple terms. He just goes through what happened. He just gives you the data, looks at it, where it went this way. He actually left some of the more startling things out in terms of what newspaper companies were demanding, and it was a lot of crazy stuff going on. But I understand it was confusing, and now we can look back, and it's much clearer now. But I think Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci, I don't quarrel with almost anything they did or said. And now they're talking about opening the schools up again. The only thing Fauci got wrong was how long it would take to get a vaccine out. He kept saying there's no way it would be less than 18 months. And it looks like that's going to be wrong, that it's going to be more like December of 2020. So there you go.
You told me Fauci didn't recommend it, right?
Fauci didn't recommend what?
The shutdown.
No CDC people recommended that. I never saw them recommend a lockdown. What's that, Sean?
The other question is, your former co-host, Leanne Tweeden, are you ever going to have...
Hold on.
He wants to know if Leanne Tweeden's going to come back. Here, I'll
hang
put
on,
him back
get him
in.
back. I got him. Sean, ask that again. Are Leanne and I going to work together again? Is that the question?
Yeah, that was the question.
We should have her on.
We had her on this stream. We'll get her back. We should
No.
get Lauren in here too.
Zoom her in.
Susan, we never got Lauren in here.
I know, because we were going to do the Me Too movement when
COVID hit.
Yeah, then COVID kind of ruined it.
Yeah, I would love to work with Leanne again. I'd love to work with Lauren again. We'll bring both of them back in here.
And then Lauren got really sick, and we thought she had COVID.
She did?
Remember, she got really sick that week? That's why she didn't come in.
That's right. I forgot about that. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that.
I like Leanne. We should call her. She could be on tomorrow. I bet we could get her on. Good suggestion.
Okay, this is a heavy question. Greg, go ahead, buddy.
Hey, Dr. Drew, how are you?
Good, man. What's going on?
Hey, I'm sorry about my voice. I got a sore throat, but I have a question. I'm 54, never touched drugs or alcohol in my life. Not because I'm any better, but here's my backstory. I had a amputation in 2017, type 1 diabetic, and I've had 13 surgeries, slept in a hyperbaric chamber 2 hours a day for a year. My wound still isn't healed up, but my doctors say I'm being paranoid because I refuse to take any pain medicine because I'm one of 15 children, and every one of my siblings are addicted to some type of drug. My father shot my mother in the back of the head in front of me as a drug dealer. I have a brother on death row, and people say I'm paranoid. They say I'm not my family, but am I paranoid for thinking that if I take one of those, I forget what it is, Percocet or some other drugs that they give me?
So
because they keep giving them to me, Dr. Drew. I have 32 bottles of opioids and stuff like that in my on my cabinet that I refuse to take. And I'm on doctor visit 272 right now. And every time they go, they kind of laugh. And they're like, dude, why don't you take these pain medicines? You're not your family. Am I wrong?
Well, I know were you reasonable to be concerned. I'm with you on that. Let's sort of assess that. And I admire your diligence in this because you can easily send you off the rail. I mean, that's the reality. So what is your ethnic background? Where are your ancestors from?
I'm sorry, go ahead and say that again.
Where are your ancestors from?
My ancestors are Germany.
Okay. And
my mom's Irish and my dad's German.
Okay. And did you ever have a problem with substances or alcohol yourself?
I'm 54, Dr. Drew. My lips have never touched any.
He said he
the
never
worst thing
took
my
anything.
lips have ever tasted.
Yeah. So
the worst thing my lips ever tasted was a double cheese pizza. That's
okay.
it.
All I will tell you is that, and you do you have a food eating overeating problem?
Yeah, no, just a little bit right now because one of my friends thinks because I was on antibiotics for almost a year and a half, so now I've developed asthma.
Oh boy. Okay, so
and I'm pretty healthy. I was an ex-college football player,
right.
But these last 2.5 years of my amputation, I just refuse to take them.
Yeah,
and my wife, who's known me since the 5th grade, she says the same thing I say. I should never take any.
Well, I think it's advantageous. It's a good thing to take as little as possible, if none. So I'm with you on that. I have no problem with that. If you're getting through this, good for you. It's interestingly
make me feel good.
Interestingly though, the family members that become aversive to substances because they see their siblings and parents and stuff manifest the disease of addiction usually don't have the genetics. They're the ones that, strangely enough, they're the ones that usually don't have that potential. But if I were you, I wouldn't want to test it. I wouldn't want to test it. So I'm with you on that. Okay.
Yeah. I just have a beautiful life of. Wife of 33 years, a 32-year-old doctor daughter who we call Miss Dr. True, and I just don't want to. I don't want to mess up anything at 54.
I think you're doing great. I wouldn't worry about it. They're only for your comfort anyway. For goodness sakes, I mean, relax. So, hey, Skullcracker, you say 100,000 dead during the quarantine. What would it be like if we had not shut down? Probably 100,000 dead. That's the point. Is that there is no scientific evidence that shutting down is different than wearing a mask and social distancing. In fact, during the 1918 pandemic of the Spanish flu, they only used masks and it stopped the outbreak. So this idea of shutting down is something totally new. Now, I would argue that in New York City, they had to shut down to figure out what was going on. But for these, states that are, have cases were spread out everywhere, shutting down makes almost no sense.
New York City's in stage 1 today.
Yeah, and by the way, by shutting down in California, we probably just stretched the whole thing out. So we're still having a couple thousand cases a day that we could have gotten through more quickly and met the need. The whole idea of the shutdown, Skullcracker, was to flatten the curve, not reduce the number of deaths, flatten the curve so we didn't overwhelm the healthcare system.
Yeah, the healthcare system.
No one ever attempted to reduce the number of deaths. That was not the goal. Now, I believe because we shut down so early in California, we may have done that. It also gave us time to come up with new improvisations and new ways of treating it. So so we're better at it. So there are going to be lower deaths that way.
Hospitals were the problem.
So the whole idea was prevent us from exceeding our hospital capacity, flatten the curve, not reduce the number of deaths. That was never a goal. I believe it was a side effect.
Scare the crap out of everybody in America.
Yeah.
We're all going to die.
Yeah.
My daughter still won't leave the house.
Nate the Protestant, why am I getting red pilled? What am I getting red pilled about? When will the monoclonal antibodies be coming out? They are already in human research, and they will be around in the fall, I suspect, and those are going to be really impactful if we need them. Okay, so Susan, are we good here? Can we kind of wrap things up? Shall I take my blue pill, my red pill? What do you guys think? Andrew, the University of Washington's updated. I saw that it was updated. Have they updated it at all?
Yeah.
And Andrew, the updates I saw were essentially flat. There were some upticks and things, and some states like Michigan had a sudden surge, and that looks like it was a backlog of tests. I saw the same thing in somewhere else I was looking at. But if you look at the graphs, everything is pretty flat, except I think it was uptick in death rate in California. California is the one that has these crazy. Well, was it California or was it for the U.S.? Let me see one quickly here. Excuse me.
You're a little allergic today.
It is allergic. I'm getting a little kind of asthma-y, which I hate.
I'm sorry. I usually clean on Sunday. So.
Yes, in California, there has been an uptick in the death rate, and I'm going to say it's because we're moving about. Uh-oh.
You're going to,
I'm getting an asthma reaction to something.
No coughing on this show. I don't want anybody to think you have COVID.
COVID, here we go. But we're having an uptick in California, and it's not a big number, but it is definitely a trend up. It's because we're moving about, no doubt. Which you'd expect. We shut down so early. We slammed this thing down and got it almost to nothing.
There's some water right next to
the average death rate for the entire state of California was 77 at its highest.
There's some water next to you if you want to take a little.
Thank you.
Sip.
As opposed to New York, where the daily death rate was over 1,000. I mean, think about that. So it was very, very, very different.
Sorry we didn't get to everybody's calls.
As always, I have to apologize for not getting to everybody's calls.
Okay, that should help. I could hear you swallow. Mics are so good.
They want to get tested. All right, you guys.
Tested.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to wrap it up. It's something in this room. I start sneezing every time, and then it starts
dusty,
to.
honey. It's a room full of lights and cameras, and we have to come in and vacuum. We haven't vacuumed. We didn't vacuum last week. We're gonna do it tomorrow. So.
Well, what's
It'll be clean tomorrow. I promise.
Yeah, I just hate it when I start getting this kind of.
I'm sorry.
Coffee thing. It's awful.
I know. I hadn't asked Teresa to come up and vacuum, and then I'm gonna.
Okay,
I usually
Ozzy, I
help
see
her
you
out.
there. South Carolina seeing an uptick, but South Carolina has been so low the whole time. It's ridiculous. And of course, even though the cases are ticking up in certain areas, we're not seeing really anything in hospitalization rate. LA County, Orange County, kind of ticking, and we should see some tick up, right? I mean, we expect that with all the exposure people are getting. But the trick is to prevent that from becoming outbreaks. That's going to be the trick here. Is going to be everybody get tested if you went out to the demonstrations, and then track it. Track people to see that
How does everybody feel about having Tyrus on once a week? He's so interesting. I'd really like to know. I think you got another call too, but we may not be able to get to everybody's calls today.
I can't, unfortunately.
But we will be taking calls on Monday and maybe tomorrow. We don't know. We're going to have
Jimmy O Yang.
Jimmy O Yang is on, and Dr. Brady Smith, who's the dentist from the Drilled podcast, who gave a new set of teeth to one of our listeners, and she went to Portland last week, and we get to see the results.
Janet West, I had seen those articles about people coming out of Baja California to get hospitalization in San Diego, so it's changing our numbers a little bit. Jimmy O Yang was supposed to be a week ago, but things were too intense, and we thought we'd put it off.
He didn't want to. He said he couldn't be funny in a riot situation.
Yeah,
but
we didn't want to.
We wanted to be more uplifting and a feel good story. We're going to show videos and pictures of the before and after, and have Dr. Brady Smith on, who's donated at least eight of these implantations and mouth redos in the last year, and he's got a foundation that he wants to promote. And the woman that sent me the letter about having PTSD from Black Lives Matter in Texas, and also couldn't smile because she had an opioid addiction for many years. She was on opioids and it ruined her teeth. And Dr. Brady gave her a $50,000 set of teeth. So we're going to get to hear that story and talk to Jimmy and have fun on Monday. So call back with all your questions.
So Monday is Jimmy O Yang.
Monday.
People are calling for Kat Timpf. They want that. And they're saying,
yeah, I'd like to have Kat on.
They're saying yes to Tyrus. Greg, foreign countries locked down when they got like New York City, when things got away. New York had to lock down. There's just until you could figure out what was going on. That made sense to me. But just keep in mind, when people say we're just following the science, there's no science to substantiate lockdown as a superior move. But in an emergency where you're not sure that everybody's going to follow precise hand washing and mask technique, I can understand shutting down. I can understand that. And that's what happened in Italy when they were in real trouble, and France, and New York. So it made sense then. And as you see, it didn't turn out to need to have been that way, but and we didn't need the hospitals they built, and we didn't need the hospital ships, and we flattened the curve quite easily, quite readily.
New York was just, they had to. It would have overwhelmed the medical services.
The hospitals would possibly. And again, asking people to not lock down, but change their behaviors. It was a little bit much, and it was urgent. It needed to be right away. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay, remind everybody about the Breonna Taylor.
The Breonna Taylor, the place you can go to donate, Justice for Breonna Taylor. If you don't know that story, please read about it. It's another astonishing story.
I told people not to click on the link until after the show. And
it's a GoFundMe. You can go to drdrew.com/Breonna Taylor, right? BREONNA Taylor.
No, it's Dr. Drew. Go.drdrew.com/Breonna, and that's spelled BREONNA. And then also we'll there's a hashtag Breway with 2 Y's that you can also do and probably find it.
Rain, you're asking? No. Somebody was asking about asymptomatic rates. There you are, Clara. Maybe as high as 30%. We don't know. That's been some speculation about that, and then those could be the ones that could really be transmitting things, could be spreading things. So, All right, everybody. Thank you much for being here. Sorry you didn't get to all the calls, but we will
Call us Monday.
Pick up again on Monday, and we'll be in here. Susan, are we in here tomorrow? Yes or no? We can't make promises
I don't
without
have any
doing it.
guests. We'll see. I don't know. I may need a day off, but we'll see how we go. I'd like people to look forward to Monday.
All right, fair enough. So hopefully tomorrow we'll take a look.
Drew always likes to do it anyway. So.
I like to do it if we're not doing anything else.
Well, why don't you come in and vacuum tomorrow, and then you...
Right, exactly. Okay, thanks, y'all. We'll see you next time.